Have you ever wondered how the Vietnam War, a conflict that drastically shaped world history, began? The origins of this complex conflict can be traced back to Vietnam's struggle for independence from French colonial rule. This struggle ignited the First Indochina War that spanned from 1946 to 1954. This war ended with the Geneva Accords of 1954, a pivotal moment that temporarily split Vietnam at the 17th parallel. North Vietnam came under the leadership of Ho Chi Minh and the Communist Viet Minh, while South Vietnam fell under the anti-communist government of Ngo Dinh Diem. These two distinct ideologies, separated by a mere geographical line, set the stage for a conflict that was more than just a civil war. It was a chess game played out on a global scale with the United States and the Soviet Union as the key players, each vying for dominance in a world gripped by the Cold War. The stage was set for a conflict that would not only divide Vietnam but also significantly influence global politics. So, how did a war in Southeast Asia draw in the world's most powerful nation, you may ask? Well, it all began in the early 60s, when the United States found itself embroiled in Vietnam's affairs. The Cold War was in full swing, and the fear of communism spreading throughout Southeast Asia was palpable. The United States, standing as a bastion of democracy, felt compelled to intervene. Then came the Gulf of Tonkin incident in 1964. U.S. naval vessels reported being attacked by North Vietnamese forces. This event stirred up a hornet's nest back home. Congress reacted swiftly, passing the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution. This gave President Lyndon B. Johnson a broad mandate to escalate military involvement, and escalate he did, plunging the United States deeper into the throes of war. The Gulf of Tonkin incident was a turning point, marking the beginning of intense military involvement by the United States. But how did a war, initially seen as a just cause, become so controversial at home? The Tet Offensive in 1968 was a watershed moment that altered American public opinion. Until then, many Americans believed their military was making headway against the Viet Cong and North Vietnamese forces. However, the scale and intensity of the Tet Offensive, which saw simultaneous attacks on over 100 South Vietnamese cities and towns, painted a different picture. The television images of fierce fighting in Saigon, the South Vietnamese capital, and the attack on the U.S. embassy there shook the American public's confidence in a swift and decisive victory. This shift in perception fueled anti-war sentiment, leading to an escalation of protests against the war. College campuses flared up with demonstrations, and the cry for peace grew louder. The Tet Offensive marked a turning point, changing the narrative of the war and sparking widespread protests at home. How did a war that seemed unending finally come to a close, and what legacy did it leave behind? The answer lies in Paris, 1973. The Paris Peace Accords aimed to end U.S. involvement, but the war was far from over. North and South Vietnam continued their bitter struggle. Then, in 1975, North Vietnam launched a successful offensive, culminating in the fall of Saigon and marking the end of the war. Vietnam was reunified under communist rule, but the echoes of the conflict reverberated far beyond its borders. The war had profound impacts. It transformed U.S. foreign policy, triggering a reassessment of military intervention. The physical and psychological toll on veterans was immense, their stories forever etched in the annals of history. The societal divisions the war engendered still influence our historical and political discourse. The Vietnam War, a conflict that lasted 2 decades, left a lasting legacy that continues to shape global history today.